Alrighty, welcome back from the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today we're going to be discussing Spencer Sanders to Ole Miss, and obviously Walker Howard is going to Ole Miss as well. And you've got Jackson Dart already on the roster, so a quarterback room that has quickly became packed. So we're going to be talking about why in the world is Spencer Sanders going there with Walker Howard and Jackson Dart already being there. What is going on with Lane Kiffin? He's got a plethora of quarterbacks now. And so we're going to really dissect that. So before we get into it, I just want to say we appreciate it. Everyone else was watching. We're over 5,600 subscribers. Let's get to 5,700. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here, or if you've been here often. Hit the like button, comment on the video, stay for an in-video challenge at the end, or comment throughout. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. So obviously, if you're clicking on this video, you must be interested. You might be an Ole Miss fan. Ole Miss now has three quarterbacks that are going to compete for the starting position come this fall. You've got Jackson Dart, who's the incumbent, who actually just transferred in last year from USC. He had I would say, a solid year. I wouldn't say it was, knock your socks off. That was absolutely amazing. We threw for just shy of 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, so nothing to scoff at. And then you have a guy like Walker Howard, who is transferring from LSU after one season at LSU. He was the number 5 quarterback in the entire 2022 class. He put his name in the portal, committed to Ole Miss just a couple days ago. And then today, Thursday, you've got Spencer Sanders that is going to Ole Miss as well. And Spencer Sanders is coming from Oklahoma State. And oddly enough, he kind of had similar stats to Jackson Dart. I mean, he threw for a little over 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns. He ran for some touchdowns and some yards as well. He scored 8 rushing and nearly had 400 yards rushing. So kind of a guy that's a dual threat quarterback, but similar stats. It's nothing crazy, and he's coming in with another year of eligibility. What's your take? I mean, it's interesting that Ole Miss is a landing spot. Initially, kind of felt like TCU seems a reasonable next stop for him. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a weird situation. I mean, credit to Lane Kiffin. He is the king of the transfer portal. I think he does better. I don't know if he focuses more on transfers or if that just who he connects better with. Maybe slightly more mature guys that have gone through college at least a couple years. And he can kind of speak to what he can add to their experience and getting them to, hopefully get to the next level. For Spencer Sanders, though, it doesn't make any sense. I think it really was just there was no other option. If the rumors are all true about his situation, he talked to Gundy towards the end of the season, told him that he wanted to use his COVID year and would entertain other options. Coach Gundy was cool with it. He left, but they didn't want him back. He is kind of like other programs like in Oklahoma or a Clemson, Notre Dame. Once you're out, you're out. We don't, not that they might not welcome you back, but it's not going to be easy if you do want to come back to a program you just left. So his situation's weird because after he entered the portal, the rumor is he tried to come back 2 times. Once right after the bowl practices were over, and once like a week ago. And both times was told no. It was apparently down to Ole Miss and Auburn. You would think that once he saw Walker Howard transfer in, he would just audible and go to Auburn because there's less competition there. Still a big program, still in the SEC, new coach. But he's going to Ole Miss. And it also doesn't make sense for Walker Howard if you think about it, because he left LSU seemingly from the outside looking in because he didn't want to sit behind Jaden Daniels for one more year. Now he's going into a situation where he's got to compete. That spot is not guaranteed. And he's probably going to have to sit for 1 year, either if it's behind Jackson Dart or if it's behind Spencer Sanders. And for his sake, he better hope it's behind Jackson Dart, because if Spencer gets to play this year, Jackson sticks around, then it's not crazy to think that Spencer would start next season. Jackson would do his final year of eligibility as a senior at Ole Miss, and then he would get to use his last 2 years in 2020. What would that be? 2025, right? Am I thinking correctly? I think so. So there's a chance he might stick around for that long term, but I mean, if he's cool with, he's got to be okay with sitting for that long. That's, and then also assuming that someone else doesn't transfer in or gets recruited over him. Like there's a situation where Walker might have put himself in a worse situation than he was at LSU. I don't understand why he left. If it is because he didn't want to sit behind Jaden Daniels, this is definitely much worse off for him. But I guess at the end of the day, it's an open competition. Jackson Dart, we'll see what happens with him. Doesn't make sense why Lane Kiffin recruited one 4-year starter and a guy that's got potential to to replace Jackson Dart after he had left. It's going to be an interesting competition. I really think that the biggest question throughout the offseason for their spring game and once the season starts, how's Lane Kiffin going to handle that situation? I know you need a good backup, but now he's got to make sure that he keeps all three of them happy, mainly the two guys that he's not starting, because they could just leave into the transfer portal again. Spencer Sanders might just retire. I don't know. It really seems like he went from being a 4-year starter, potentially 5 if he would have stuck it out at OSU, and is going to ride the bench for his final year of eligibility and make his odds that much worse to make it in the NFL.
And he probably felt that Ole Miss is a better option just because of Lane Kiffin, and I wouldn't blame him for that. But the thing is with Jackson Dart is he hasn't used his redshirt year. So there is a world where Jackson Dart is able to redshirt this year if Spencer Sanders does start. But I just get the feeling that Dart's going to play. I think he's going to start this year. And I just don't know that Spencer Sanders is going to be able to come in and learn the system and be able to beat out Jackson Dart. I don't see Walker Howard really coming in and playing day one. He'll probably have an opportunity to. But the thing is, does Lane Kiffin really have to worry now about Walker Howard? If he transfers again, he has to sit out a whole year. So I wouldn't necessarily be too concerned. Jackson Dart, if he transfers, he's got to sit out for a year unless they're graduate transfers. So now Lane Kiffin at this point, he's got 2 younger quarterbacks, and he's bringing in a veteran quarterback. Veteran quarterback's got no eligibility left outside of this year. He probably figured, why not at this point? And it sounded like that Sanders thought his stock was a lot higher than it was. And now he's coming into a quarterback competition that's going to be fierce. And Ole Miss is a better football team than Oklahoma State. So I will defend, if anyone's new here that's watching this video, maybe an Ole Miss fan, we're more of an OU based podcast. And obviously we've seen Spencer Sanders for the last 4 years. Spencer Sanders last year was running for his life. I mean, they couldn't block anyone. No one could get open. I mean, it wasn't great, but don't get me wrong. I mean, Sanders was making mistakes as well, but he was running for his life, especially in that Bedlam game. He could not have any time. He couldn't do anything. So he's going to go to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is going to be a better program, but you're playing in a better conference. You're playing the best conference in college football. You're competing against 2 guys that were highly rated coming out of high school. You've got an incumbent quarterback that's already been on campus for a year and put together a pretty solid year. And honestly, while I've been saying that Spencer Sanders didn't have a lot of help, when you look at his stats, what you want to see is an efficient quarterback, and their ratings improving every year, because in theory, as a starting freshman quarterback, you should be playing better than you were then by the time you become a senior. His rating every single year at Oklahoma State went down. He never had an improvement. I mean, his freshman year, he had a rating according to ESPN of 145.4, and last year he was 128.3. I mean, his completion percentage was under 58%. It wasn't great. I just I just don't think Spencer Sanders can come in and start. And he provides great depth. If Dart plays bad or does get hurt, I mean, Sanders can be a plug and play and he can win you some games. But I think Dart gives you a lot higher ceiling. What do you think?
I agree. And again, I don't think Spencer made the wrong decision by leaving Oklahoma State, because that also seems to be a dumpster fire right now, with their DC leaving. No one really likes their offensive coordinator, and Gundy doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. A lot of their offensive starters have left. Some of their defensive guys have left. It really just doesn't seem like a good situation right now in Stillwater. So going to Ole Miss doesn't, just from like an overall perspective, isn't a bad idea for him to try to go. But like you said, it's not like he's improved every year, and he's had decent players around him. He's never had like he didn't have like a James Washington or Justin Blackman or Des Bryant to throw to, but his wide receivers were never terrible. They were decent, guys that could catch the ball consistently for him. But it's going to be for all three quarterbacks, because like you said, Spencer Sanders hasn't improved, but it's not like Jackson Darnold did enough to really say, I'm going to be the guaranteed starter next year. No one can beat me out. And Walker Howard's in a situation where no one knows what he's going to put on the field, because no one has seen him on the field. So it's legit going to be a question of who's going to separate themselves from the pack. And I would also agree with you. I would think it's going to be Jackson Dart, but it wouldn't be surprising if one of the other two guys was going to start to threaten his job once we get close to the fall. Lane Kiffin will probably have some sort of decision made once August comes around on who's going to be the starter, or maybe he'll play QB carousel, kind of like Jim Harbaugh did this year at Michigan, when he started JJ McCarthy one game and then he had Cade McNamara on another game. And it was back and forth, I think, for the first 3 games before he decided who was going to be the official starter for the season.
It could be, but I feel like that's still not the best option to go down. But I mean, really, the last topic or last point I want to make is, as Jackson Dart, what do you think he's feeling? I mean, I understand the Walker Howard deal because Dart has 2 years of eligibility left. He could redshirt, but I mean, obviously, he's not anticipating that. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. So bringing in Walker Howard makes sense as far as, the kid's got 4 years. So, I mean, he's the natural, the heir of the starting quarterback position at Ole Miss. But then when you see a guy like Spencer Sanders come in with 1 year of eligibility, what does that say? I mean, I'm sure Lane Kiffin is telling him, he's not guaranteed anything. I mean, you're the starting quarterback as of today. But the thing is, I mean, it sounds like that Lane Kiffin's promising him, he promising him nothing, but he's at least probably promising him that he's going to have an opportunity to compete. And I just think that maybe Dart might start wondering, like, is Lane Kiffin thinking elsewhere that maybe Walker Howard is the guy that's going to actually take over, and not let me finish out my career? I'm not saying that's the case, but it just seems taking one quarterback's one thing, taking two is another.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. And again, I think Spencer Sanders, I get wanting to leave Oklahoma State, but he should have just audibled there at the end after he saw Walker Howard committed and gone to Auburn. Would have been a better situation for him, and at least would have gotten an opportunity to showcase that he can be a good quarterback and get to the NFL. Now it just seems like he's going to be hanging out on the bench unless an injury happens, which I guess it can always happen in football, but you never hope for those, and it's going to be tough for him to get on the field.
It will. So do you have any final thoughts or an in video challenge for this video?
What do you guys think? Does Spencer Sanders really have a shot? What does that say to Jackson Arnold or Jackson Dart? And is Walker Howard really the future for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really interesting quarterback room and something to watch as spring ball and summer ball comes up, and we'll be in that season before we know it. So, made it this far, like the video, comment on the video, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to leave us a review on there. It helps us out a lot. And we'll catch you in the next video.